I have a confession to make, and there's something that I haven't been entirely honest and open about my life and who I am, and and I want to come clean today. I want to be honest. I want to kind of set the record straight and be clear and express myself in a way that I haven't done before. Something I recently attended an event, and while at this event, God really convicted my heart, and He impressed upon me to share with you all, and to be really true and honest with what has been taking place. And I hope that this coming clean and being open with you is going to be an encouragement to some of you who are watching today. And I am looking forward to getting this off my chest, so to speak. For those who don't know, my name is Enoch Leffingwell, and here at the Army of Youth, we are passionate about helping young people to identify their unique talents and dedicate them to Christ's service. So if this is something that interests you, I encourage you to subscribe and follow us on social so you can get more messages just like this one. So my confession goes like this. While I was at this event, it was an event that was teaching people how to identify problems in an area so that ministries will be able to serve their audience better and to be able to equip them and to create opportunities for people that could solve their problems and help serve them at a higher level and know how to find the people that are in great need of what these ministries or organizations have to be able to help to contribute to others. So it was at this event. It was pretty cool. I learned a lot, but there was this one message that really kind of shook me up as I was listening. It was really powerful. This lady was describing how when we are born, every one of us has two basic needs. And these two basic needs is a need of attachment, and how babies, if they don't have attachment, they've done studies that babies that do not have that physical touch, that connection, that love, that they will literally die. Human babies will die. It's a need of humans. Doesn't matter where we're at. We all need that attachment, that connection, that love. And then the second need is the need of authenticity. She was actually quoting from this doctor, and he was explaining how the mind works and how humans are. And this need of attachment, the need of attachment and the need of authenticity. Authenticity of being who we really are and expressing ourselves in the way that God has created us to be, and being honest and true with that calling that God has and how He's uniquely shaped us. And he was explaining how oftentimes in our childhood, what happens is with our need of attachment to our parents, it sometimes comes at the expense of our authenticity of who we are, and how sometimes, like he was showing how every parent, without exception, have at times made including himself. And he's an expert who just focuses and talks on this. And he says he goes through a lot of effort to not do that, to be intentional. But it's like there's like this natural situation that occurs where as parents, they unintentionally communicate to their children that if they express themselves and how they are, who they are, then they're going to get the disapproval of their parents, that they're going to get they're not going to be accepted or loved, or that the parents put expectations for the children to live up to, and if they go in a different decision or go in a different route, then they're going to lose the father's love, lose the parents' support or encouragement in that regard. And so what ends up happening is the children, as children, we tend to disconnect between who we authentically are. And in order so we can stay attached to what we need. And when there's this disconnect between the authenticity and the attachment, he was explaining that's when trauma occurs. Trauma is not the thing that is done to you, it's the thing that happens between your eyelid. It's the things that happens in the mind when we detach from who we are authentically, and the attachment that we're trying to get, we have to sacrifice one to save the other. So what this does is we go throughout life and we're not fully expressing and fully living in harmony with who God created us to be. and each one of us has some unique differences that are more of who we are. And it's not necessarily a matter of like whether it's right or wrong, or, and I'm not talking about like punishing children for doing the wrong thing. That's something different. But I think it's more of, a lot of times I believe that parents have expectations for their children, that maybe a parent didn't live a certain way, or maybe the parent had values and beliefs that were installed in them from their parents, and therefore they want to install those beliefs into their children. And maybe the child studies the Word of God, or maybe the child lives life and realizes, wait, that's not actually the same. Those values are not actually the culture of heaven, or maybe those aren't really the culture that God is calling me to be, or to really realize that there is some realm of that. It doesn't violate any of the principles of God, but it's not a matter of like whether it's right or wrong. It's more of a matter of like, God gives us free choice, and there's some preference. There's diversity in the gifts that God gives, and there's diversity in the families and the creations that God gives. I mean, you could just look at humans, where no human is the same in every particular, and there's just so much variety. But when we try to take our children, or when we try to take those in our sphere of influence, maybe it's someone we're mentoring, or it could have been a teacher, and we try to do a cookie cutter approach, that we want to mold people according to our expectations, despite who God is uniquely shaping them to be, then that starts to create like this conflict internally between our need for attachment for those who we love and trust and care about, and then our authenticity of who God has created us to be. And she was describing how so much like we were not going to live a fulfilled life and truly experiencing God's plan for our life if we are not being authentic and we're not being truly who we are. And she was saying this, I'm like, okay, like I've heard some things like this, and I'm like, this is powerful, this is good. And she was just explaining in her own testimony of how she was trying to live up to her mother, she was trying to live up to her mentor, to different people, and she wasn't really in harmony with what she believed God was calling her to be, who God was calling her to be, what He was calling her to be, and what He was calling her to do. And there became a war sometimes with who she trusted and wanted to attach to, and also the authenticity. And she was just expressing, like the event was just showing how, you know, with the internet, there's a lot of freedom for you to be you louder, to be you times two, to be able to express who you really are and not have to like fit under this molds of what people have said that you have to do, but more of like, there's a lot of freedom, and people can really see when you're not really being authentic to who you are, what you were made to be and do. And she was saying that, I'm like, wow, that's interesting. And she asked a question that just felt like I got punched in the gut, where I was like, oh, it's almost like it knocked the wind out of me, so to speak. And she was like, she was just showing the need and the importance of being authentic and who you really are. And she asked the question, she's like, what is a way, or what is an area, or in what way have you not been truly authentic? What way have you been holding back from others the gifts that God has for you? It's like, what way, like I'm paraphrasing, kind of rewording it in my way, but this is what I heard. And she was just like, in what way have you not been authentic to your true authentic self? And I just remember hearing that, and I was like, oh, it's like instantly something came to my mind, and I'm like, no, Lord, is that true? Is this like, have I really been holding back? Is this like not being myself and who I really am? And I started to think, it's like, well, this is actually something that I've done since I was like 10 years old. And it's like, yeah, that's a part of my childhood. It's a part of like my joys and my happiest moments in life. And I was like, well, I guess there was a time where I kind of like stifled that, and I stopped it for a while. I don't really talk about that a lot on video or sharing with people. And you know, as I start thinking, I'm like, you know, if people know me outside of the camera, if people know me in person or like talk to me, they know I'm extremely passionate about this, but I don't really talk a lot about it to you. And it's like the people that I want to serve, that I want to help, that I want to like be a blessing to. And I want to get to know, and I want you to get to know me. And I realized that I haven't really been fully honest and fully myself. And I was praying to God, because I'm like, what are the implications here? Like, God, is this true? And I was just like, I was praying for like the last 3 days of events, and I was just like, in like almost every hour, like it was in the back of my mind, like, Lord, what do I do with this? Like, is it true? How do I make sense of this? And as I've been praying and I spoke it over with people that are close to me and with our team, and I began to realize, you know what? It's true. My confession is that I have a great joy and a great passion for not only like ministry, winning souls for Christ. Like, I am so extremely passionate about seeing lives transformed before my eyes because of what Christ is doing in their lives, because he did that for me. And I love ministry. I've dedicated my life to working for God. And at a young age, and the greatest desire that I have is to see more young people dedicate their lives to Christ's service, because it was the best decision I ever made in my life. And I realized that there's a challenge with that in teaching people to dedicate their lives to Christ. One of the big issues that comes up is that people want to know, like, how am I going to like financially support myself? How am I going to, like, I want to work for God, but what is that going to look like? And there's some practical questions. I know in the 8 years I've been in full-time ministry, God's provided all of my needs, but I also know that one thing that has really helped me to succeed in ministry, that I believe is true to who I am, is that I really love entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship has always been a passion of mine. While, like I mentioned, when I was 10 years old, I got into entrepreneurship, got a taste of it, where I started selling candy bars door to door. And while many kids during the summer months were outside riding their bicycles, I was going door to door selling candy bars, making what, with inflation rates, it would have been about $27 an hour in today's standards when I was 10 years old. And I loved it. Like, that's what I enjoyed. Some of you know my background was from video games. I played a lot of video games, but the video games I played, I wasn't really like beating the game and doing things. Really what I did is, like, I bought and sold things online for like 8 hours a day during the summer sometimes at certain ages. And it's like, that's what I did. It was just fascinating, interesting way to solve problems, to be able to find valuable problems and solve them for people in exchange for support and just helping them. And I realized, like, a lot of what we do in ministry, we have a health food store, and the health food store is what helps to fund and support the ministry that we could do, to be able to have this recording studio and to be able to have this place, this building that we do ministry and we support missionaries and we do work for God. But it's through entrepreneurship that is able and has been able to, for so many years, to fund the work that we do. And I realized that, like, this is a part, like a huge part of me that I don't really talk about. And not everybody knows, and sometimes it slips out, especially I'd say in the last year, I've been a little bit more bold, a little bit more vocal about it. So for some of you, you're like, yeah, I already knew that. It's like, you've been like that. There are those who know me, but for those who, you know, I've been watching and they just kind of see what I'm up to, and they may not have realized to the degree of how passionate I am about working for God and helping to solve problems for people, and realizing, like, I love marketing, sales, business principles, and I love how I see that there's so much transfer, that all the skills that I learned selling things when I went to middle school. I sold gum to the middle schoolers. And then when I went to high school, I started flipping cars, even before I had a driver's license, and I started selling cars. And then when I gave my heart to Christ, all sales and everything that I did just stopped. I stopped selling everything and anything. But all those skills that I learned in sales, I started to transfer to start selling ideas, not for money, but just like the same principles for teaching, for persuading, for explaining, and to help people to make good decisions. And those skills that I learned in entrepreneurship, they were transferable in winning souls for Christ. But I realized for about 5 years, my first 5 years as a Christian, I had mentors that were more of like a poor man mentality. They thought that it was like they had different values, where my mentors I really respect, they taught me how to study the Bible. They gave me a good foundation in spiritual things. But when it came to financial things, like, I would not recommend those principles and ideas for being able to actually labor for the Lord. And I realized, like, one of the things is they valued money way more than they did time. For instance, they'd be like, why would I pay someone $40 to do something when I could do it, when I could spend 10 hours of my time and do it for free. And so they thought that they got the better deal. If they worked for 10 hours and saved $40, they got the upper hand. And I began to realize that actually time is more valuable than money. Money comes and goes, but time lost can never be gathered again. And I began to understand there's different principles in entrepreneurship. It shows you how to be able to prioritize your time in a manner, in a way that you can build team, that you could work with each other, you could be a body of Christ, that you can help serve others. And I realized that Jesus, many times, he took people from the business world who understood, like many of his disciples, they were businessmen. You see James and John, they were fishermen, and they were in their business, and he called them forth to, and he was saying that as they were fishermen, that was a family business with their father, Zebedee, and he said, come, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. So you see what Jesus was doing there? He was showing them how everything they knew about the business of fishing can also be transferred and applied to the business of winning souls. When Jesus was 12, he was in the temple, and his mother's like, where were you? And he says, wist ye not I must be about my Father's business? So there are some similarities between secular business and the business, our Father's business, that there is similar principles that are transferred, not exactly the same outcome or the same specific, but I began to realize that there's principles. Romans 12 and verse 11, Paul even says to be not slothful in business, fervent in spirit, serving the Lord. And truly, I believe that our business, when consecrated to God, can be a vehicle for serving Christ. That business and religion are not two separate things, they're one. That ministry is, or business is a vehicle to minister to the needs, to solve problems, and to help serve others. And I believe if more people started to see their calling, their occupation, their career, their business as their vehicle for service, that there would be more people laboring for God today than there are. And it would give clarity as far as what kind of sources of income or what kind of job opportunities or career paths or there's so much opportunity where you could work, where you could get paid from, but how many of them allow you to represent Christ and to serve others? I'm not saying that you gotta so much quit your job and be a full-time pastor or anything like that to serve God, but actually using to be a missionary in the marketplace. I believe that's a very real thing. The 11 o'clock hour workers, came from the marketplace in the parable. If you read that, what Jesus said. So what I'm saying is that I realize that this is something that I haven't really talked about very much. And as I began to realize who I really am, and part of the reason why that this message of authenticity, of who we are authentically and our desire for attachment, in my desire to be attached to the mentors and to trust them and to respect them, and they have expectations, even to this day, they're like, you got to be careful about business things, that's not good for you. And so I started to adopt these kind of ideas or principles, but then I realized that I was living up to other people's expectations. I was doing what other people thought for me, but when I really started to inquire, what does God want for me? I began to realize, and I started praying for a mentor who loves souls, who has such a burden for evangelism and souls like me, and someone who understood business principles, financial laws in the scriptures, someone who is a medical missionary, someone who has a style of leadership that can actually facilitate more people laboring together and doesn't push people away. And I was God started to give me an abundance of mentors that fit that specific description. And as I started to realize, these people thought totally different. And they realized that they were laboring for souls. They were doing studies with people from all sorts of faith. They used their business as a vehicle to have access to a class of people they otherwise wouldn't be able to access. So it was totally different than the way I did ministry those first 5 years, as opposed to the last 3 or 4 years, in being able to be an entrepreneur and a Christian working for God and a missionary in the marketplace. And I began to realize that that's really the more I study, the more I realize this is who I am. This is what I was born to be. And I had a detachment between my authentic self and what was expected of me. And I want to say today, that I believe that attachment the detachment will be no more. I'm going to be more honest and more open. And I started to realize, like, what does that mean as the Army of Youth? What does that mean, the implications there? And how does that fit with like who we're serving, what we're doing, how we're helping? And I realized we still want to help the same people, but we want to, what we're going to be doing moving forward here is we want to serve what we've always done from the beginning. What our vision is to be able to help young people who want to work for God, and to be able to identify their talents, dedicate them to Christ's service, to be able to use their talents to do the ministry that God has called them to do so they could do it better, and help connect people with the mentors that could speed up the process to learn from their mistakes and experience. And that's really what we've always wanted to do. But now what we're going to do is we're going to add another filter with who we're seeking to reach. And we want to help young Christians, entrepreneurs who want to work for God and to financially support themselves while dedicating their talents to Christ's service. And we're going to be starting to share with young people who have an entrepreneurial bone in their body how that they don't have to be afraid. They don't have to feel like this is a wrong thing, that this is a noble aspiration. Solving problems as an entrepreneur is, I believe, a very Christ-like thing. And you even see Jesus in Revelation 3 represented as a door-to-door salesman. He is knocking on the hearts of Laodicea, and he is coming and he says, "Buy of me gold, tried in the fire, that thou mayest be rich." And Jesus is offering, he's coming as a salesman. There was principles. There's a reason why Jesus is represented as a salesman, knocking on the doors of people's hearts. And there's just all throughout the scripture. So what we're going to do is we're going to start breaking down the Bible secrets to be able to serve Christ and financially support yourself while dedicating your talents to Christ's service. This has been a passion of mine for as long as I could remember, since I was like 10 years old or so. And I think it's about time that I be true and more bold and more vocal about who God has created me to be. And I know that there's other people out there who you might be wondering, like, I wasn't sure how I could have my passion for entrepreneurship, my passion for ministry and souls in Jesus. I didn't know if they could blend or whether they could or should, or I didn't know how that works. But like, I want to work for God. I want to financially support myself. I want to know, where do I start? What do I do? How do I use this as a vehicle for service? If that's you, then I'm excited for this journey that we're about to go on. I don't believe it's by coincidence you've listened this far. I'd love to hear from you. Let me know in the comments below, what is it about working for God that's what is one of your biggest questions about your desire to work for God and financially support yourself while using your talents for Christ's service? I'd love to hear your questions, and maybe we can get some conversation going on this. And then I could probably do some more videos answering some questions, but we could also just spark discussion. It would be so fun to hear from you guys. I'm excited. Thank you so much for watching, friends. And if you like this video, I encourage you to join us on every week. We do these small group Bible studies that we like to call squads, because we're in the Army of Youth. And each week there's a bunch of people who want to work for God, who love the Lord, who are seeking to solve problems and labor for souls. We come together for 1 hour a week, and we study the Bible. And it is so fun. And they're practical lessons you could apply to your everyday life. And you're going to study the Bible in a way you've probably never seen before. And it'll solve such practical, relevant questions to the direction and decisions of life that you're seeking for. I really want to invite you to come be a part of the Army of Youth squads. And if you're interested, all you got to do is go to the website, thearmyofyouth.com/squads, and you can join us today. That's again, thearmyofyouth.com/squads, and you can choose a time that works best for your schedule. So friends, thank you for watching. I pray this is a blessing. If you liked it, then share it with someone and let them know what opportunities are about to come forward for them. And remember that God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called.